What does it take to build a company or culture that not only lasts but thrives for generations? Jim Collins calls it level 5 leadership. I call it contagious culture in action. And in today's episode, we're diving into one of the most influential leadership books of our time, B 2.0, and exploring how the principles inside can radically not only just transform the way that you lead, build, and sustain a culture, but create one that outlives you. If you're ready to go from entrepreneurial spirit as an educator to architect of excellence, this one's for you. Welcome to another episode of the Contagious Culture podcast. I'm your host, Kyle King. And the goal of this podcast is to help you create an ecosystem of academic excellence. And through inspiring conversations, practical strategies, and actionable insight, we empower educators just like yourself, leaders and change makers to foster trust, collaboration, and academic excellence and provide you with the resources that you need to empower your students to the places that they deserve. Months ago, I was recommended the book B 2.0 by Jim Collins and Bill Lazier, and I was absolutely blown away. Oh my goodness. I've received a lot of leadership books in my time. And by far, this was one of the best books that I have read. I'm still rereading the book again and again and finding ways to implement this within the daily practice of the Culture Lab, but then also leveraging the tools of this book so that I can be a better leader, but then also sharing the insights and steps with other leaders so that they can be the best that they can be for their schools. So today we're going to talk about various perspectives and aspects of the book. I'm going to give some real-time insights into how this work can show up in education in your school as you prepare for this year. But one of the first things that I wanted to start with is at the beginning of the book, it talks about this idea of first get the right people on the bus and then figure out where to drive it. And there's another book called The Energy Bus that reminded me of this model once I began to read this book. And I talk about this so often in our podcast on the importance of just getting the right people on the bus. You need the right people far more often than the right strategy. And without great people, you simply cannot build a great school. You can simply not build a great institution, a great vision, a great model. So if you have the right people, you can start with a terrible idea. And with the right people, you can make it successful. And for me, why this is so important and why I talk about it so often is because with schools, we often look at degrees, what school you came from, if you have your praxis or master's degree, and all of these various things. But when you think about where you're driving the bus as a leader and the standard of excellence, the culture that you want to set, the ability or way that you want your teams to work together and collaborate, how you solve problems as an institution, what inspires or drives or motivates us, where are we charging for? When you think about bigger topics outside of just ability to teach or ability to review data, do you have the right people on the bus? Now, the reality of it is what we've seen in working with schools is that oftentimes what we've noticed is that the right people on the bus may not always be the people that have the best resumes. But what we call here at the Culture Lab, it's the people that start with heart. It's the percentage of individuals that are committed to the mission, driven by the vision, and committed to becoming whatever it is that is necessary, committing to the actual habits, choices, and the doing so that we can collectively create something at our school that's worth having. If your number of people that are in seats that deserve or desire, or you believe that are in alignment with the seats that you need to fill, if your number is under 90%, then that's where the focus needs to be within your organization. And oftentimes as educators, we're focusing on specific skill-based strategies. How do we drive this specific academic achievement? How do we look at this data? How do we increase enrollment and all of these various things, rather than asking ourselves, are 90% of our staff in the right specific state? Just because you went to school and you have a math degree and you studied the praxis and you're certified in a specific area, maybe I've noticed various things in your ability to work with students or process information. I may want to move you to a dean of students role. Maybe your ability to create community engagement partnerships and these various things, I may want to move you out of the front desk assistant role and then into a more community facing role. Or when you assess your team, are 90% of your team members in the right seat based upon their zone of genius? Not just based upon their degree or their resume or what they've already been doing within your school, or not even just based upon proximity or what you needed in that moment. As leaders, we have to stop putting people in seats just to fill seats. And I would rather wait and not have a person in the seat so that we can get the right person, rather than having the wrong person in the seat. And in this book, it talks about it so often. You have to get your key seats filled with the right people. You have to know when to shift from develop to replacing. And that was one of the key components that I've even learned as a leader, is that as leaders, we are focused on developing talent. We focus on, we want to be able to cultivate, we want to be able to mentor, we want to be able to encourage and empower talent to being the best that they can possibly be. But where's the line between develop and I need to replace this person or remove this person? See, there's a difference. It goes develop, replace, remove. Now, that replacing phase is, I don't want to remove you because you're either bought into the mission or you drive results, but I want to put you in a different seat. And in me putting you in a different seat, if we can't see results in this area, it may lead to the removal. Because oftentimes what we do as leaders, where we make the mistake, is that we act too quickly to remove someone, or we're waiting too long to make decisive actions to replace someone. And if it's the latter, where we're waiting too long to make a decisive action to remove someone, the challenge that comes up with that is that other people see that. And that decreases and deteriorates our culture within the school, because other individuals, especially high performers that are actually bought into the mission, that are riding the bus, that are in the right seats, they're seeing the standards that are set. They're seeing that, hey, well, I don't have to be efficient, or I don't have to be positive, or I don't have to show up on time, and that person's still in their seat. Or if you act too quickly to remove someone, it could create a sense of fear throughout your school building. So here's a few questions that I want you to consider. I want you to write them down. Again, this is based upon the B2.0 book, and it's so in alignment with the new keynote that I'm working through, Contagious Leadership, how great leaders inspire change within schools. But these lessons from Jim Collins are absolutely amazing. So there's a few questions that I want you to consider. Are you losing other people due to keeping this person? And like I said earlier, when we're waiting too long to make decisive actions or replacing someone, other people leave. Because one of the things that I've recognized in engaging in schools with high performance, or even someone that is a high performer, you don't want to continue to be around low performers or Debbie Downers or culture killers, is what we like to call them within the Culture Lab. Second question, do they have a will to succeed and develop? These are questions that will help you understand, do we need to move them from develop to replace to remove? Do they have a will to succeed and develop? Next question, do they focus on the mirror or the window? And this question is great because the mirror is, do they look at themselves first? Or the window is, do they fix blame everywhere else except themselves? When I was a director of school culture and student advancement, I worked with a leader that I would say was window focused, where they never pulled a mirror up and said, hey, I have these problems. I need to improve in this area. I may have looked at this emotionally. rather blaming other people and orchestrating various things that created culture killer mentality. So when you think of the people on your team that you may be assessing that are that 10% are not in the right seats, does this person see work as a job or a responsibility? Does your confidence in this person rise or fall? All of these questions are powerful, but the most powerful question that I reflected on is, do you have a bus problem or is it a seat problem? And sometimes you have the right person in the job in the wrong seat. Sometimes this requires us to understand our people, their talents, their zone of genius, so that we can be able to have not just a culture that is supportive, but a culture that is strategic based upon the standards of excellence that we've set, so that we can ensure that our greatest strength has to be in growing these leaders so that our organization can become what it is supposed to be able to become. Our schools are not growing because we're not committed to growing leaders. Our schools are not growing because we're putting people in places that they are not supposed to thrive in. They're looking at this work as a job and an obligation rather than a responsibility to transform lives. So when you think about your school this year, when you think about your school this week, how many of your team members are not in the right seat? And if you were to give a percentage, and this is an exercise that I would want you to work with your leadership team, what are the standards in which that we are assessing the right fit for the vision, the mission, and what we're trying to develop here at X school? And then I would want your team to create a specific diagram or survey or rubric so that you can assess every single leader or every single individual within your building based upon that standard. Oftentimes I've had conversations with so many leaders and I ask them their framework for hiring. And many of them that I've had conversations with, say we have a set of interview questions, and we go through these questions, and then we have an interview and then a modeling and all of this. And then I challenge them and I say, well, what is this framework based upon? And how did you get to this framework? And how often do you even update this framework? And then it's a lot less responses that I've received. And the reality of it is because oftentimes we do have great frameworks, especially as educators. We've been doing this work as educational leaders. We understand the types of people that we want to be able to bring on, but do we really understand the vision, and how often are we updating or communicating or even enforcing that vision? If we want to be able to reestablish a culture of this, then do all of our people align with this? Are we re-interviewing people throughout our process to understand, do you still fit within where we're trying to go? Or just because that teacher is dominating in the classroom but destroying from a culture standpoint, do we allow this in our schools? So one of the things that I've recognized that I love from this book is there's a concept in the book called the unit leader. The unit leader. And I want you to write this down. And the unit leader is someone that you must invest in when you're building a pipeline of leaders. A unit leaders are focused on excelling in their roles, in their pocket area. The best thing that you can do for your career is to stop focusing on your career, instead focus on taking care of your people. They wouldn't let me fail. Now, I want you to think of this perspective from Jim Collins. Who are the people on your teams? Who are the people within your school that could be the unit leaders that could lead and grow in their specific pocket? And who are the people that want to take care of other people? This could be department leads. This could be specific teachers. This could be even students. Who are the people that you can cultivate? And I would recommend you creating a unit leader committee and have these individuals as an opportunity to mentor each other, hold each other accountable, but then also have them as your army as they go through the school. They understand the mission, they understand the vision, they understand the values, beliefs, and where the school is going, but they're also not afraid of being courageous and holding people accountable to the standard. If we believe in our culture, why not create it? Why not enforce it on a daily basis? When we begin to have the right people in our schools that have the right cultural DNA, we produce massive results. When I look at contagious culture as a whole, it starts with a dream. It is enforced and created by systems, of course. It is upheld by people, and it allows us to deliver results. So when we think about all of what we're trying to create as leaders, we need to be bigger thinkers, backwards design it so that we can be able to create a school that is worth coming to, working at, but then also recommending. As leaders, and I'm not going to go through the whole book, but as leaders, one of the things that I've recognized is we have to have this idea of what Jim Collins calls it as a multiplier effect. If you are the top person of an organization or a leader within your teams or your pockets or your units or even a district, then how does your tone and your energy set the tone for the whole organization? Because the one you set at the top will multiply throughout your organization. The one that you make department leader, that same tone and energy will multiply throughout your team. The one that you allow to be the assistant director or the assistant principal will allow you to multiply throughout that specific zone as well. A bigger, more controversial topic when we're approaching schools, and if board members are listening into this right now, this is why it's important to have board members that are in alignment with the mission, the vision, and the values of the school. Because oftentimes we may hire great leaders within a specific school building, but if it's not supported with great leadership on board of directors, then now those great leaders within buildings, they're handcuffed. And they're not able to really drive change in the way that they are supposed to drive change because they're handcuffed by someone that is more focused on control rather than change. The primary barrier, and chapter 3 talks about this, the primary barrier in any company is poor leadership. Any school is poor leadership. And the top leaders have a daily dramatic impact and must be the architects of greatness. How can we multiply our efforts? How can we be the unit leaders? How can we commit to getting 90% of our teams, 90% of our teams in the right position? How can we commit to it? By understanding first what leadership even is. Personality is not leadership. You don't need formalized power or personality or charisma to influence people to make an impact within an organization. And this is one of the most challenging points for me in the book as I was reading through it, is because for me, I've always led with personality and charisma. And I believe that leadership was about rounding people up, get them behind the vision and charging forward. Leadership is commitment. Leadership is enforcement. Leadership is accountability. Leadership is empathy. Leadership is active listening. Leadership is authenticity. Leadership is transparency. Leadership in a whole is integrity. And those things are much more important than personality. Those things are much more important than charisma. Command with the most delicate touch is leadership. And leadership is the art of getting people to want to do what must be done. You have to first figure out what must be done. Second, it's not about getting people to do what must be done, but about getting them to want to do what must be done. The third, it's not a science, it's an art. So what is your gift? What is your leadership gift and artistry that you can refine so that you can become the best leader and then get people on your team to want to do what must be done? How can we live more authentically, live within our values, commit to our standards, and then drive people to a sense of excellence that can drive student achievement, not just within the classroom, but within their lives? The values must come with leadership, and they have to imprint themselves on everything that we do. What type of leader do you want to be? And is that type of leader the type of leader that your school needs? Where do we need to focus on more of a becoming process so that we can become a better leader? What books are we reading? What podcasts are we subscribed to? What conferences are we attending? But outside of all of that, how can we show up more integral? How can we be a better listener? How can we be a better assessor? How can we be more strategic in building relationships? And how can we just love on our people and care about not just their position, but their people? My name is Kyle King. Thanks for joining me on another episode of the Contagious Culture podcast. Ask yourself this week, what kind of culture am I spreading? Culture is everywhere and in everything. Make yours worth catching. We'll see you guys next time.